to the ODP Public Show and Tell for ODP products. I will be handing over to the product team shortly, but first, just in case anybody is new here or joining us for the first time, I'm going to give a brief reminder just about why we're all here and what it is that we're doing. So we're here as part of a growing and vibrant community of council officers, digital specialists and technical experts, all working to shape the future of local government planning services. So today's session is a chance for our amazing product teams to showcase what they've been working on, share progress, and celebrate the impacts that we're making. So we have demos from BOPS and PlanX today, and we have the full hour today, which is great. So there's plenty of time for questions. So please feel free to put your hands up and share any comments that you have. So I'm going to hand over to Ed from BOPS. Ed, do you want to share your screen or do you want me to keep sharing?
I see. Yes, I will be sharing my screen. So you are welcome to stop sharing. It kicked you off.
Could I just ask? I think someone might be off mute and I can hear a little bit of background noise. I don't think that's with you, Ed. So just if everyone could check they're on mute, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I am being as quiet as a mouse at the moment, so that definitely isn't from me. Yes, good morning. My name's Ed. I am a product owner with the BOPS, which is the back office planning system team. I work for Buckinghamshire Council in the planning department as a lead digital officer. As you can see, I've shown my screen and this is the logon for BOPS administrative system. So I'm going to, without further ado, log in and start a live demo. So this is the staging system. So anything doing in here doesn't affect our production system that we have. Once signed into the admin screens, we now have an applications area. And this is enabling us to manage consultations. So one of the things we've identified throughout our user research with local authorities is we need to start automating and making things easier within BOPS, and part of that's around our consultation process. So we can see here we've got a list of our consultees, and we can identify these consultees spatially. When we're within a conservation area, for example, we can see that we have a constraint of a conservation area. One of the bits that we were missing is the connection between that conservation area and our conservation officer or environment agency for flood zones, etc. So we've built an interface now within admin that allows each authority to not only set up their own consultees, but once you go into edit, you can assign them to one of those constraints. So we've got a series of spatial constraints and we can assign our consultees to those constraints. So in this case, we're looking at a conservation officer. So I can come into here, I can find our conservation area constraint and assign them and submit it. So once that's done, whenever we have a spatial search on an area and there's a conservation area, it will auto populate within BOPS with that conservation officer as a consultee. I will go into BOPS and show you exactly what that looks like for the end user. Again, same, we can set that up for trees and landscape, and this system also enables us, he says, see, live demo, and the internet's gone slow. It is thinking about it. Anyway, you are able to assign more than one constraint to a consultee. So for example, trees and landscape, you might want to assign them to TPOs and historic gardens or parks and gardens, etc. within your authority. So you have that ability to add multiple constraints to one consultee. Here we go. So I can actually demo what I've just been saying. So here we could say, well, we've got trees, so we're interested in ancient woodland, and we're interested in historic parks and gardens and tree preservation. So if any of those constraints are present on an application, it will assign the tree and landscape team to that constraint. The constraints that we use within BOPS work slightly differently, I think, from most systems at the moment. So part of the open data community and platform, there's planning.data.gov.uk. This is a fantastic platform that is forever growing in the work they're doing. and they have a very large number of data sets that are available spatially, and BOPS connects to these through the ODP suite, much as PlanX on the submission side. So rather than loading and maintaining spatial layers within BOPS, BOPS sends a query via API for each application, and it retrieves the constraints that are present within that application. So from a local authority point of view, you've got a single source of truth. It's all within a central platform, which is publicly available data, and it reduces all the administrative tasks of collecting, collating these layers from all these different agencies, and saves a lot of internal configuration work. So that's one of the advantages we've got. So I will log out and log back in as a planning officer now. In true Blue Peter style, here's one I prepared earlier. So I'm hoping that this case, which has constraints that match those that we were just looking at, in consultation, we're able to view here. So we can see here that the Environment Agency have populated for the flood zone, conservation area has our conservation officer, and tree preservation zone has our trees and landscape specialist. So that, I think, brings my demo to an end, and I will be passing over to Andrew, who is going to show us some site notice things we've been working on in BOPS.
Thanks, Ed. Just going to share my screen. So this doesn't really have much in the way of visible changes, but what it does do is very much improve the printed layout that we have for our site notices. So I'll just run through creating a site notice. This is still the same as before. So we go into here and going down into consultation, into the publicity. We create a site notice, in this case. Yes, it's a household application. Here you can customize the information that's sent to people, the site notice team, depending on where to put the notices. But if we just create one now. Great, site notice, see it's just created, and then we can just download it, and then I can bring it up here, and you can see here how we've created a site notice with both a map and a QR code, and you can customize it with a logo up here. The link in the QR code has a query parameter on it that indicate that it's come from the QR code, so you can actually track that in your analytics. And these links are also clickable. So if I click this here, it takes me to the applicants page. You can customize it. There's some elements that are customizable here. So we can customize the logo, and we can customize this contact information down the box, down the bottom. So I'll just show you that in the admin section. So here we've added a new section of settings called Manage Site Notices. And here you can paste in a SVG logo. Your design team will probably be able to supply you with this. And then we can either, if we don't add the phone number here, it will use the kind of default one in your profile, same with the email address, or you can override them for site notices. And also you can disable or showing assigned officers on site notice. So in terms of the PDF here, this controls what information appears here. So hide this name or hide the or change these details here. And that's it. I'll hand over to which one am I handing over to?
It's me, Andrew.
Right. Okay. I'll hand over to Laura.
Thanks. Celia, if you could share the main slides again, that'd be great. Thank you. So my name's Laura. I'm a designer and researcher with Unboxed, working with the BOPS team. My colleague Dawn was going to join me today, but she's not been able to join us. But everything I'm saying was half her work as well. I'm just going to wait for the slides to come up. Perfect, thank you. So I'm just going to talk through very briefly some work we've done, a bit of a discovery around planning performance agreements, or PPAs. So what we wanted to do was think about and understand whether a PPA service would be essential to us being able to offer a BOPS pre-application service. We already have a BOPS pre-application service, and we're improving that at the moment. So we wanted to look at whether a PPA would be another layer to that. So this was really about gathering some evidence and scoping out a potential product roadmap for PPAs and help the product team decide what, if anything, we should take forward. Next slide, please. So we spoke to a few people, a couple of applicants. So one planning consultant who is a director at a large planning consultancy, but also spent 10 years working for a central government department. And then a land and planning director to an SME developer, one that works quite closely with one of our ODP councils already. We also spoke to people from 5 different councils in a range of roles, so actually 6 people, including planners, digital planning people, and planning support team lead as well. And just one more thing on this slide, we did see a big variety in how PPAs are used at different councils. Some are only used for full planning applications, some for pre-applications, some through the whole process, right up to like managing obligations. One council wasn't using them at all. And this variety comes in for different reasons. Obviously, there are different types of applications coming in. Some councils have far fewer major or more complex applications. But a big factor is also the culture within the council and whether they see any value in having PPAs. And I'll a bit more on that later. Next slide, please. So I'm very briefly going to talk through what we learned. If anyone wants to see the full discovery playback, I can share that later. But I'm going to focus more on the pain points here. The fuller deck has some of the positives as well. So very briefly, onto the next slide, please. A couple of key points from our 2 main user groups. So firstly, case officers. Those handling PPAs were usually quite experienced officers, and they can feel like they're just doing a lot of admin and not much planning. And we know that planners like planning and not doing admin. And this partly comes from often not having a clear process or templates for managing PPAs. So often having to just make up their own way of doing things, and sometimes having to do that time and again every time they start a new PPA. Next slide, please. For planning consultants, they're really under pressure to deliver value for money for their client or for their company. But they do obviously have a bit of an unequal relationship with councils. They know they have to do what is asked of them by the council. They also need to justify the cost of that to their client, and then get very frustrated if they're not getting the service they think they're paying for. But they do very much see the value of PPAs in theory and want to have a good working relationship with the planning officer. Next slide, please. So the biggest pain point really was that I think both sides felt that the practice of PPAs is not always matching up to the theory. So in theory, PPAs should provide structure, certainty, coordination and clear timelines for planning applications or pre-applications. Often in practice, deadlines are missed for lots of reasons, schedules are unreliable, and there's a lot of variety in approach and expectations. So this quote quite sums up the sort of planning consultant experience. I hear the phrase necessary evil a lot. It's frustrating, as you know, the council can't resource the agreed timescale. So the applicants really understand the pressures that councils are under. So they're thinking, why are we all signing up to this schedule of activity that we can't actually match up to? I should say the degree to which this happens varies a lot between councils. We did hear some really positive things, and it's dependent on a number of factors. Obviously, the resource available within councils and the type of applications that are coming in through that council area. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to go through about 4 of the main themes. So one was around lack of consistency. So in terms of the tools and templates available for PPAs, we heard that there sometimes are a few shared resources, but these might be poorly categorized, as in like where you find them in your filing system, and can really vary in usefulness. There's a lot of officers, particularly those very experienced officers, just knowing in their head, like, oh, we had a scheme like this before, so I'm going to look for the PPA that we used for that scheme and then sort of start with that. So there's a lot of just relying on what they know, which then makes it hard to share templates and knowledge in a standardized way and with more junior officers. And we also heard actually both planning consultants and case officers just reusing submissions as a starting point. So we heard this quote saying, someone was told they needed a PPA and they asked for a template and the council said, well, you need to go away and find one, which they found very frustrating as they were paying for that service. Next slide, please. So another big pain point was around systems. So again, officers really using multiple systems to manage their PPAs. This might be spreadsheets. It might be using things like OneNote or their own note-taking tool. And that's often just based on their own preference and the way they've done it in the past. They might be recording notes, for example, notes from meetings or conversations in different ways. And again, in a personal system that makes it difficult for other people to see or pass on. There's a lot of emails flying around, which we know can be hard to track and hard to go back and find when you need to find them. And in some cases, officers were doing some of the invoicing, which and without any easy integration with finance systems, which they're not trained finance people. They saw as something that was quite difficult for them to do. Sorry, I think I put the wrong quote in here, but this quote was around saying, because everything's kind of locked away, it's easy for the applicants to say, you're causing delays because you're not doing what you're meant to be doing at your end at the council. But actually the council's thinking, well, you're causing the delay, but nobody can see where that's happening. Next slide, please. So just picking up on that point, another big pain point was around communication and visibility. So a feeling that communication is inconsistent from the applicant side, feeling that they might send an email and then it just disappears into the ether. They know they can't chase the case officer because they're so under pressure, they're not going to answer their phone. And this then leads to additional demand in that might try and escalate it. They might try and contact somebody else, and so on, which just adds to the delay. And again, there's that no shared visibility of timeline. So, you know, we're just undermining the usefulness of things that are coming up. So if there's a meeting scheduled and people haven't been able to prepare for that meeting, then the meeting becomes less effective. Next slide, please. So this last point is about value for money. So we just heard that consultants don't think they're getting for value for money, but they're very afraid of giving any critical feedback because they need to maintain that good relationship with the council. One consultant we spoke to said that they'd really liked the service they were given at one council that used external contractors who were just focused on doing this. But for local authorities, it's very hard for them to track time involved in delivering PPAs. So it's really hard for them to get an accurate picture of return on investment and how much resource they're putting into this. And the consultants also told us they don't feel they get a very clear breakdown of service versus the fee they're paying. And again, they need to justify that cost to their client. So that's all a big risk for particularly the smaller firms where, as I'm sure people understand, there's a huge cost, financial risk up front in getting a planning permission, and that's all sitting with the client for as long as it takes to get to the point of determination. So just to summarize those pain points, you go on to the next slide, please. And I think the next slide as well. Thank you. So we found customers paying for a service where they might have to find or create their own template. They might have to calculate themselves how much it's going to cost. They expect timetails to slip. They feel they have to chase or escalate for it to progress. They're carrying the financial risk of delays, but they're really reluctant to complain about any of this. From the officer's side, in the next slide, please. They're putting a lot of time and experience into a service that should really make their job easier and improve planning applications, but is often frustrating and adds pressure to already overworked officers. Requires them to find their own tools and resources, doesn't always meet its objectives, and while it does generate income for the council, they're not really sure if it's covering the costs of delivering the service. So finally, on to the next slide, I'll just talk briefly about some of the opportunities. The next slide, please. So there's a quote from someone at Salford Council, which I think really embodies the opportunity we see here. So the PPA is imposed on us, on both the applicant and us. It's an agreed project plan. It's a conversation. It shouldn't be them and us. Let's try to act like a single delivery team. So how can we rethink PPA to support this kind of single team delivery that enables both parties to participate in this kind of conversation towards a shared objective? And I should say that Salford in particular were one of the good examples where they talked about, you know, if an applicant asks up front, this is what we want from the PPA, and they felt they couldn't resource it, they would go back and say, look, that's not realistic. This is what's realistic. Let's work on this together. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So just for kind of opportunity areas, one was around standardization. So just creating some more standardized and useful tools and templates that can adapt to different types of application and different complexities that work for both applicants and case officers. Something around visibility, so making it easier for all parties to communicate within the system, reducing email traffic, and to see what's coming up. For example, you know, is there a meeting about transport coming up? What are we talking about that meeting? Who needs to be there? And where delays are happening. So everyone's aware of why a delay is happening and whether there's any point in actually trying to chase up. Automation, so looking at whether, based on the scheme or the proposal, could we actually automatically generate a PPA schedule? And also use, you know, existing tools that already do lots of things really well, like calendars, meeting schedulers, note takers. How can we use some of those tools just to make case officers' jobs easier? And finally, this idea of flexibility. So moving beyond a sort of signed off document, which we found in some cases might be signed off at the beginning and then nobody looks at it again, or it might not even be signed off until halfway through the process. So can we move beyond that kind of idea to more of a conversation? So final slide, please. What are we doing now? We're looking initially at how we might be able to address some of these needs through the pre-app service. We had a really useful workshop with Camden yesterday to talk about some of these things. I'm also looking to chat to planning officers at the moment about communications and notifications. So if anyone wants to get involved with that, just for a really quick chat, you can message me on Slack or message in the group chat. And that is it from me. So thank you, and I'll try and respond to some of those questions.
Thanks, Laura. Do we have any questions? I think there's a few questions in the chat.
Do you want me to pick those up now or just respond in the chat?
We've got time to pick a few up if we want to pick maybe one or two up now.
Okay, so Alistair's asked, I think this is that other LPAs have a menu of standardized template PPAs that applicants can just sign up to, and how different are they? If anyone wants to respond to that, we'll post these again in the main channel as well. And Becky's responded to that from South Gloucestershire. Oh yeah, okay. So they're actually all responding to the same question. That's fine. Yeah, I think that's it.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. So next, I think I'm handed over to David for PlanX.
Thanks, Celia. Yeah, good morning. My name's David Forster. I'm the ODP project manager at Doncaster Council. And I'm going to quickly run through general inquiries, which is a really good prime example of one of the user-derived PlanX services that we've been developing in collaboration. So I'll just share my, hopefully it'll share my other screen. So yeah, you should be able to see this sort of multicolored spreadsheet here. This sort of goes back to the beginning of general inquiries. This sort of came about because there was a few authorities that sort of saw the need for a service that dealt with the large number of general planning inquiries that came into teams' email inboxes. In Doncaster, we had a lot of these coming in that the team worked on a daily basis, and we wanted to design a service that was really reducing the unnecessary contacts from customers. So towards the beginning of this year, we created a working group. As you can see from there, there was a few local authorities that worked on this together. And what we did, we got together and we sort of went and worked out what the most common inquiry types were in each of our local authorities and put them in this list here. So as you can see, there's quite a lot that are repeated, site history requests, access to historical records, people chasing progress on applications, people wanting to know whether they need planning permission. So we went through and made this list of the most common inquiry types, and this really sort of dictated how the service would be designed. Now, hopefully you can see the vision of the PlanX editor now. So what happened after that? We went away and we started designing the PlanX general inquiry service. And ultimately, it is just a really simple smart form, a really simple flow that groups together some of the similar inquiry types into different common inquiries. So it sits on our main planning landing page on the Doncaster Council website. So any users that are coming to planning looking for an answer to whatever question they've got, it comes up as the first option here. Have you got a planning question? And it just briefly runs through what the service does, what they will need to do, and the expected response times and things like that. Just gives a brief welcome to the service, explains that it's a new service still under development, and then these are the first. This is the first tier of questions that people are presented with, and now it was designed in to sort of meet the GDS principles, which is focus on your user needs and do less. So we did have some issues initially looking at this content. We had a lot of different options and we had to really sort of like compress those down into a few easy to understand paragraphs that people would see what inquiry they were wanting to submit, you know, which branch it was going to be under there, but also didn't have too much information on there. So as you can see, we've ended up grouping quite a few different types of inquiries under these sort of main headings. At Doncaster, this is the most popular types of inquiries that we get. Section 106 inquiries, planning permission inquiries, a lot of heritage and conservation, and a lot of people with slightly different questions, but ultimately wanting to view records of planning applications. So if we take something like view planning application records, under here, you can see that there's another round of questions, and this sort of deals with the different types of questions that people generally come to us with. So a lot of people will be just wanting to view a simple planning application. Some people want to view applications that are not digitized yet and that aren't available to see online, so they need to go to our archives building. We get a lot of inquiries about specific sites, history of planning applications as well. And then also, if the inquiry isn't dealt with under that first tier of questions, we've got an option at the bottom there that will ultimately lead them to the contact form. So we get a lot of these other types of inquiries as well, generally from third parties such as solicitors, wanting copies of agreements and things like that. But ultimately, if someone doesn't get the answer that they're looking for, they select this option and it will take them to complete a contact form. That contact form then gets sent through the PlanX payload, and we've got a process set up in the background that generates that for the team to then deal with. So we do also use analytics on this service. Can't show you the page at the moment because it's not working, but you can see here we've got these data fields that sort of track where people are going through the service and which are the most common types of inquiries. And hopefully if I bring this up, hoping you can all see this spreadsheet here. This is basically what I've copied from our analytics service previously, and it shows the most common routes that people are taking. So as you can see, a lot of people that are coming to this service are actually just wanting to know whether they need planning permission for a project that they're wanting to do. We also have a lot of people just want to check what constraints apply to the property. And we do have some queries about discharging planning conditions. That's the main crux of it. We are also now working on trying to link this up with an AI chatbot that's being developed for our customer services section. So hopefully people will ultimately come to our main landing pages, use the chatbot and get the answers direct from there without necessarily needing to go through this service. And that's it. That's the main thing from me. Thank you. I think Johnny might be next.
Yes, cheers, David. I'm up next. Celia, you happy to share the main deck again? Thank you very much. Amazing, Max. So for those of you who haven't met before, my name's Johnny and I'm one of the content and service designers at Open Systems Lab, working on PlanX. And today I'm just going to talk through the section that I've called modular content for multiple services. If we go to the next slide, please. Oh, have we skipped one there? Yeah, that's sorry, the intro one, please. Perfect, thank you. So there's a bit of broader context here to what I'm going to talk about. So PlanX, both as a product and as the suite of services that it contains, it's kind of designed to create minimum maintenance for councils. That's kind of from the scale of like a single node, a single question, for example, which may have some hard-coded options, through to the scale of a whole service, such as find out if you need planning permission, which exists as a template, so that councils can adopt that template. And really kind of the way we think of this as designers is, so we think of PlanX content as a series of repeatable blocks or patterns or modules. Why do we build like that? Well, the main reason is developing good planning content that takes like time and resource. It sort of needs domain knowledge, design knowledge, understanding user needs, and often an understanding of the statutory kind of context of this stuff. So wherever we can, we want to be kind of maximizing the value that can be derived from any specific sort of content. Also, and this is really important, when content needs to be updated, whether that's because of user feedback on a live service, a change in the legislation, or other reasons, it's important that it only needs to be changed in one place. And when it is changed in one place, that change is applied to all instances of that content across councils and across services. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what I'm sharing today is just one example of where we're kind of taking this idea of modularity to respond to as wide a range of user needs as possible using the same core content. Or to put it another way, to put it simply, why have one service when you could have two? Specifically, I'm going to talk about how the use of modular content within a statutory submission service, in this instance, apply for household or planning permission, has allowed actually the rapid, or pretty rapid and kind of straightforward development of a standalone guidance service. Working title, what information will I need to provide with my application? Next slide, please. So just a bit of background to kind of where this work has come from. So around a year ago, back in late 2024, Newcastle, one of the ODP councils, identified a need for and subsequently developed what they've called a validation check service. So this is a standalone guidance service for users to find out what information they would need to submit in advance of preparing an application. The service covers a number of consent types, including householder planning permission. Next slide, please. Then early this year, a number of councils launched an apply for householder planning permission service as part of the ODP sort of full stack pilot. And these services included an optional module that assessed the project against the local list for that council and subsequently presented the list of the required documents, drawings, and pieces of information to the applicant and invited them to upload them. So it's kind of bespoke upload your document step, kind of tailored to the local list of that council. Next slide, please. And then coming right forward to now, the last couple of months, OSL, we've been working with Doncaster alongside a number of other councils to develop their apply for householder planning permission service. And in that process, so I've been working with Beverly at Doncaster, and she asked whether they could create a standalone what information will I need to provide service alongside embedding that local list checker within the apply for planning permission service itself. Next slide, please. So that really prompted us to ask this question. Newcastle have developed that standalone guidance service. We have apply for planning permission services that also have these kind of local list rules embedded within them. So we thought maybe this is the time to kind of explore this question, framed here as like, can we use the same content in multiple settings in a way that's both beneficial to public users and minimizes content maintenance for councils? And to answer this question, we've been carrying on working closely with Doncaster and their local list, their local information requirements. I think it's probably worth mentioning at this point, actually, like one of the great things about the fact that we're sort of working within the context of this ODP community is that we're never working in the dark on this stuff. So this process of development has felt very smooth. And using the PlanX editor as like a collaborative platform means that myself as a content and service designer can be working on the same content at the same time as someone on the council side, like Beverly. So yeah, exploring this question so far has been quite an enjoyable process. So next slide, please. I'll just jump into actually briefly what that's looked like. So often one of the first steps when we're developing something is trying to get knowledge, information out of documents to eventually end up as rules in PlanX somehow. I'm sure lots of you are familiar with what local lists look like. They're typically a PDF document, either a table or kind of sections of text describing when certain pieces of information are required and what they'll need to contain. So our first step is to develop a kind of shared understanding of those local list requirements. And the best way to do that is we found is kind of via a shared database where we can start to understand those rules line by line in a clear way. And we can kind of have a back and forth over any rules that aren't too clear, any language that we don't quite understand, or maybe is a bit gray. So that's kind of step one. From document to database is how I've summed up here. Next slide, please. Once we have that database, actually, then getting it into PlanX is the next step. And that's a kind of translation process. You're going from these kind of lines of data into a graph. But once we have that graph, that is very much, that's the kind of core flow where all these rules live. That is the local list in a PlanX flow. So that kind of will then sit at the core of whatever comes next. Next slide, please. And that is what we do next. So we have those rules now. We call them the local information requirements. They exist as a module of content. And then we can look at how we integrate that content into these different services. So for a submission service for Apply for Household Planning Permission, it basically involves just kind of dropping it in as a module. A lot of what has already been answered in that service as part of the application form helps kind of automate through that local list module. And then for the guidance service, it involves preceding it with some extra content that gathers enough information in order to set the rules. And then some final steps like offering guidance on actually what information will need to be provided. Next slide, please. So what's the outcome so far? It's worth saying this is not finished yet. It's not launched, but we can see these outcomes materializing. So we have this guidance service that can provide a potential applicant with a list of required information during the project development, likely during the kind of early stages of project development, which crucially shares the rules set at the point of submission in the householder planning permission service. And importantly, if these rules change, then updating them in one place in that local list module will update both services so they're always aligned with each other. Next slide, please. So what next? We are currently in the final stages of developing the service, specifically filling out lots of the kind of guidance and supportive text in those nodes. And then I imagine we'll be moving into a testing phase there. Next slide, please. But I think more broadly, in thinking about what's next, this is not a unique approach for local lists. This approach could and actually is being applied to a number of different services. So, for example, how much will my application cost? We already have that content in our statutory submission service because it sets the fee that the applicant needs to pay. And August is already looking at, my colleague, I should say, August is already looking at what that looks like as a standalone guidance service as well. We could be thinking about some of these pain points we hear about, like biodiversity net gain. Is there potential for a service called Do I Need to Consider Biodiversity Net Gain? Again, the content already exists in part in submission services. Or, for example, will I need to pay SIL? That is my last slide. So yeah, happy to take a look at any questions. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks, Johnny. Do we have any questions? No, doesn't. Oh, John's got his hand up.
I suppose I've just one quick question. First of all, what amazing work. Incredible to try to get a grip of all this detail. I think it's just so exciting. But my question is just an idea of, I know you've hinted about a sort of a timeline and the next steps. I guess I'm trying to work out how long do you think the first sort of tests and you know, the first phase of seeing this in the real world might last, Johnny? I don't want to pin you down to an expected launch date. I'm just excited to know who's going to be involved and how long that might take to get some first bit of decent feedback for you.
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's hard to pin down kind of exact dates right now, and it is worth saying, like, kind of the idea and the impetus to develop this has come from Doncaster, so we're kind of taking an active, but I would argue supporting role in it. So timelines are very much kind of up to Doncaster, I would say, but in terms of the reality of where it's at, it's not far at all from being able to be tested. I think obviously we would want to then structure some user testing around that, you know, controlled user testing with our user research partners before just flinging it out there into the world. Yeah, I can't really be more specific about dates for that right now.
That's great. I just wanted to know where to watch. That's all. Thank you so much.
Any more? No. Okay, fab. Well, massive thank you to, oh, I think there's another hand.
Hello. I've worked with Johnny and Doncaster on like some of the inquiries and before. I'm just looking at this. Like, I know that one of the pain points that we were talking about when it comes to finding information is that the council websites are often poor. They are limited when it comes to what they can change in terms of layouts and that sort of stuff. I'm just thinking, as I'm looking at what David was presenting earlier and what Johnny was just talking about, whether, considering how complex planning is, all of the problems might be solved by if there is actually ways of asking questions by the public, it might remove the problems with trying to all individually create the content that people would find the information from and would be and basically leaving it to individual councils. Exactly. It's like you just ask the bot or ask the people that are like managing the bot instead of with your specific question, instead of going through the pages and pages of lingo, which in planning's case is always quite difficult to digest. So I don't know, maybe that would be a way of basically, yeah, communicating with the public. It's more a comment, not a question.
Thank you. I think there's another hand. Stuart?
Hi, I work at Slough, just sort of following on from what Joanna was saying. Yeah, I mean, having a sort of a data repository of frequently asked questions would be really useful in terms of sort of developing chatbots. We're currently looking at sort of chatbot development within Slough around planning, and there's only so many different ways you can ask the same question before you then end up with a very similar answer. So maybe a joint working way of looking, you know, that sort of bank of questions, that bank of answers would be incredibly useful to then produce almost like a standard format that could then be plugged into some of the more popular sort of chatbot providers might be, you know, it might help.
I'll just sort of come back on that thing. It's really interesting, and I know that the work that we're doing with the AI chatbot, from what I understand, hopefully there's like an option there for it to sort of log what questions are being asked by people when they come to a website, and if local authorities can track those logs and use that information to develop that sort of repository, then that's a way forward. But I think it's probably a lot of work at this point to start gathering that sort of data, and then if you're talking about like a central repository or like a template or something where you can put all that data into one place and then everybody has access to it, I think we're probably like very much on the sort of doorstep of that at the moment. There's a lot of work to be done on it by the sounds of it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Okay, well, massive thank you to the PlanX and BOPS teams for presenting. The recording will be available on YouTube, and yeah, enjoy. Oh, Shanique.
Sorry, that was a mistake.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you again in 4 weeks' time. Take care. Bye.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.